Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff, and I don't know if you saw, but I think Jessica was muted in that. So I'll just introduce myself a little bit. As you saw on my panel, I am coming to you from the Seattle area. I'm excited to be joining this event. This is my 17th year in education. I started out as a high school special education teacher. I'm now an elementary school principal, but I will always think of myself as a special educator. And I am excited to hand this off to our awesome group of panelists. And I'm going to go ahead and begin with Carrie. So, if Carrie, you want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jeff. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Bonnet. I am an executive function coach based in Bend, Oregon. Jeff and I are not far from one another. I, too, am a veteran teacher. I taught middle and high school for 14 years before this path. I've been doing this executive function coaching work now for going on 6 years. And I am also an adjunct instructor for University of Portland. So I also work with teachers. So I have lots of teacher stuff going on in my world. So thanks for having me, everyone.
All right, Tony.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Scheck-Snyder. I'm the Associate Dean of College and Career Counseling at Franklin Academy. We are a boarding school in Connecticut that serves neurodivergent students. I'm also a certified executive function coach and offer coaching and college counseling through the Franklin Academy Center for Neurodiversity. I'm super excited to be here.
And Everett.
Hello, everybody. So I'm a sophomore at Embry-Riddle, a class of 2025 graduate at LSS. I'm over here in Daytona Beach, and I am a fellow neurodivergent student, and I can't wait to continue this.
And Matt. Matt, I think you're muted. No, we can't hear you. Yeah, you're definitely muted. Why don't we go ahead and move on a little bit while Matt works on the sound there. And because this was a very popular event, we have a couple hundred people who are joining us. So it'd be really great if people just put in the chat, where you're coming from and maybe your role, teacher, parent, student, and we can just make it a little waterfall. Vancouver. Very exciting. Well, welcome everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with our first question. And this is a question for the whole panel. If anybody wants to answer first, go ahead and raise your hand, give me a signal. So when you think about neurodivergent students preparing for life after they exit high school, what does it look like when they are truly operating from a place of strength rather than deficit?
I can speak to that first, Jeff.
Great.
What comes to mind for me, this comes up a lot in our work, right? Like trying to get to help students and families and teachers understand that neurodivergent students are have lots of strengths. I find that sort of going backwards is important. In other words, students are hearing a lot about deficits, right? Of the deficits that they have, and they're hearing words like lazy and impulsive and forgetful, and so we have to flip the switch on that. So to me, I think about it as a shift, like a really important shift that has to take place, so that we're starting to acknowledge, like, oh, it's just a brain thing. These are not character flaws. And then then only then we can start to sort of students can start to see their strengths, right? Because I know a lot of students that I work with are embarrassed or ashamed or fill in the blank with other adjectives about the way their brain works, but it takes like a little shift there in order to start seeing the strengths as strengths and the challenges not as deficits, but just a brain thing.
Go ahead.
So in my work, I see that when neurodivergent students are operating from a place of strength, they understand how they learn best and they can advocate for what they need. So it's not about eliminating challenges. We're all going to have challenges in our lives, but it's about building environments and systems that allow strengths to drive success. Success isn't doing everything independently. It's knowing how you work and building a life that works with you.
Yes. And to add on to that, I would say, like, as a neurodivergent student, owning my neurodivergency has always been the biggest way to succeed. Like, here at Embry-Riddle, for a while during my first semester, I was like, no, I don't want to use testing accommodations. Like, I want to be like everybody else. And then halfway through, I was like, wait a second. No, I am neurodivergent and I have needs that are my strengths. And so I started using testing accommodations. I started working with my professors, and my whole semester changed. Like, it gave me so much positivity just by owning my neurodivergency.
I love that ownership word too, like taking ownership of it. But it takes time though, right, Everett? I mean, it's not a no-brainer. It's not a immediate easy thing. I mean, I was just looking at the chat from where lots of parents are here and lots of teachers. Like, it takes time and it takes a lot of trust in people who love you and know you and know your brain and yourself, trusting in yourself and better understanding your own brain too.
Yes, like I said, it took me half the semester. Like, I was like, no, I don't want to. Like, I know my own brain. I don't need help. And then it wasn't even needing help. It was just like, wait a second, I'm going to give my brain what it wants. And it wanted to sit in its own private room and take its own tests. So that is what it decided to do.
I love that.
So you shared a little bit, Everett, and in our pre-meeting, you also talked a little bit more about being a neurodivergent student and your journey that kind of led you to graduating early and to entering college early. Can you talk a little bit more for our current audience? Share more about your story, any important barriers that you might have faced, and like what ultimately helped you get to where you're at right now?
Of course. So I will say around kindergarten, I was identified as a gifted student. And so me and my parents, or not really me because I was too young, but my parents began looking for different programs that would best fit me in the local area. And I am from a very small town. And so the educators there just weren't given the resources to help a gifted student. Like, some solutions we were presented with was giving me extra busy work during class, or like 30 minutes a week being pulled out of my classroom and having a meeting with other neurodivergent students. And that just wasn't going to work. That wasn't going to challenge me. That wasn't going to keep my brain stimulated. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. And so my parents started looking, and through a long journey, through a plethora of online academic programs, me and my parents finally found LSS, and LSS immediately challenged me, immediately led me to so many opportunities, and really showed me where my strengths were, but also showed me where my weaknesses were. And one of them was, believe it or not, talking to people. And so we began working with my professors and figuring out, okay, how are we going to get over this barrier? Because it was a very large barrier, like, would not talk to anybody that I did not know. So I started with emailing my teachers, and I would just email them, wouldn't go into their office, wouldn't use my camera, wouldn't use my microphone, would simply email them. And until I got comfortable with that, that was all I did. And once I got comfortable with that, I was like, okay, the next step is go into the classroom, but just use the chat. So just use Zoom chat or just use Teams chat. And that worked really well because it let me get that live interactivity where I was getting an immediate answer to my question, but I didn't have to put my camera and my microphone on. And then the obvious next step, turning my camera or my microphone on. And so I would turn my microphone on and would talk to my teachers and would get even faster responses. And I was like, ooh, I kind of like this. Like, this is going well. And so I turned my camera on. And after that point, as my fellow professors or my teachers in this audience that can speak for this, I was not quiet. I went to student ambassador programs. I helped start mentorship programs for middle schoolers. I did everything I could possibly do to help showcase the school that helped me, because it truly was the support system here at LSS. I think that is my biggest reason for succeeding was my support system. I had my wonderful college counselor. I had all of my teachers. I had my parents. I had friends. Like, I truly was able to lean on somebody. I was able to say, hey, I need help. What's the best way to do this? And everyone at LSS was able to provide answers for me that let me move forward. And then I'm in college. And I knew in college, I was like, okay, I'm going to need a support system. I had a support system in high school. I knew these people in high school. I know no one at college. I have to actually go into their office now. I can't go to their office in my pajamas. Like, there is different steps that need to be taken now. So I immediately, once I got on campus, began looking for support systems. The disability services program here is amazing. They call themselves accessibility service, not disability services, because they believe in everything being accessible to anyone. And following that motto, I met up with them. I met up with student services. I met with my professors. Professors have couches in their offices. It is amazing to go sit on those and just do schoolwork. And I also met friends. Like, I met people who had similar struggles as me, because at Embry-Riddle, they're all so motivated. And so I was like, hey, I'm struggling with this. How would you best approach this? And some people had already dealt with that experience and had opportunities and different ideas that they were able to provide to me. So hitting those barriers and then having that support system, I think, is the best way to overcome it. I will say one barrier I've not gotten over is the fact that I'm not 18. It's a quite interesting barrier. And I will say that there's multiple companies working on solutions trying to get around that due to my skills that I developed at LSS. I did so many dual enrollments. It is unbelievable that I'm a sophomore but a freshman. It's really fun. So yeah, it's a support system, I'd say, is the best way to accelerate, best way to succeed as a neurodivergent student.
Everett, did you find I'm curious to know a little bit more about the support system. Was it something that was just there for you, or is it something that you reached out for, or like how did you go about developing that and accessing that?
I would say it existed already at LSS. Like, college counselors are there. They're constantly emailing you, constantly, hey, how can I best support you? My parents were obviously here. They kind of had to be there for me to go to my meetings. And so I'd say it was there. I had to reach out and grab it. I had to own my neurodivergency and say, no, I know what I need. I know what I want. Let me reach out and grab that support system. Luckily, it was already there. In college, I had to build it a little bit more just because LSS is really built around neurodivergency and following an untraditional academic path. Whereas at Embry-Riddle, I had to more find it and put it together, but I still had to reach out. It was still existing, just a little bit harder to piece together. But yeah, I would say support system already built, just had to grab it.
Thank you. For the rest of the panel, after listening to Everett's story, does anything stand out to you? Does anything resonate with you or connect to experiences that you've had with students in your lives?
I can speak to that. The thing, Everett, that stood out to me, a couple of things. One is your comments about little by little chipping away at this, like, you were saying you didn't like to speak in class or, that just the little by little nature, I guess, is what sticks out to me. So as a coach, that's what I often do with students around lots of different things, right? Challenges that they have, goals that they have. So I'm struck by how dedicated you were and how just you acknowledged that, and maybe your support people also acknowledge that, we're not going to throw him into this situation and require him to turn his camera on or speak in class, or like, but that you were able to kind of chip away at this thing that you wanted to improve, I guess is the way to say it. And that little by little, that baby steps, that like tiny things lead to big things, really stood out to me for sure, because that's true in all kinds of ways that students want to get better at something, right? And as educators, as parents, I'm a mom too, as teachers, it's important to know that like progress is really measured in baby steps, right? Like little by little by little by little. And then of course the reaching out part stood out to me too, that I work with a lot of students who aren't always wanting to stick up for themselves and stick up for their brains. And so that's one of the things we work on a lot is this self-advocacy piece. So I love that you were able to get to the point from that like kindergarten not kindergarten, from that not wanting to say anything in class to now here you are on a panel, to then also asking for what you need at school. That's good stuff, Everett.
Yeah, that last part stuck out to me too. Just reaching out and grabbing it. I always tell my students that my goal is to make sure that they leave us with the tools and the resources that they need, but it's up to them to pick them up and use them. So that was just nice to hear someone your age actually like resonating with that. So
Yes. I will say it's not always often that I see it, and it always makes me so happy, like when I see somebody else get there. And I always try, if I see a student, I'm like, okay, here, let me help you. Like, let me show you how to get there, because it's hard. It's not something that's just real quick. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Let me just go ask this person, this person, this person, this person. Like, no, you need to advocate for yourself, figure out which person you need to ask. Then often something I see as an autistic person is figuring out how to ask the right question, and people figuring out how to ask me the right question. It leads to so many fun challenges.
Another thing I was just thinking about when you were saying that is that it takes a lot of executive function to like ask for help and to seek out those resources, right? Like you have to figure out, do I need to make an appointment with this person? Or you have to be aware that there's a challenge going on and you have to maybe get to an appointment on time, for example, or plan it into your class day. Or so sometimes I think part of the reason why students don't ask for help is that it takes a lot of skills to ask for help. And so I love what you're saying, Everett, is that you try to help others, right? Like that, what a great community you're in. Somebody has you have someone else, like to say like, I'm having this challenge with this class or this situation. Where are the resources? And then get some support there too. The asking for help piece for asking for help is critical but it's not always easy to do. Yeah.
That kind of leads me to a thought, is that for those like the students that might not know how to ask for help, is there a tip? Is there a strategy? I know that we talked a little bit about little by little, but like what are some ideas for how to get over that initial kind of inertia to build some momentum?
I recommend, and I know this sounds very elementary, but it's really helped a lot of my students. I recommend sentence starters, like looking up sentence starters just to be able, because sometimes self advocacy is all about one, understanding your needs, and two, being able to effectively communicate them. And it's that last part that trips some people up. They know what they need, they just don't know how to phrase it, or they don't know how to ask for it. So something as simple as looking up sentence starters to help you phrase a question the way that you, like Everett, you said, learning how to ask the right questions was huge. So that would be my biggest tip, is to, get a little help just starting that sentence.
I love that. It reminds me, Tony, too, of Everett, you were talking about at first you were emailing teachers, and then you kind of got to, so I love that sort of baby step thing. But then also I run into students who don't feel confident. Like, what do I say in an email? So in our work together, we talk about that. I learned this acronym from another coach. It's PING, PING, like P, pleasant introduction. Hello, Professor so-and-so. I'm in your class, blah, blah, blah. And then I is to like inquire. I am not going to be able to meet the deadline. Is there a way that we can, whatever the inquiry is? And then some sort of N is negotiate, like some sort of, so it's, Tony, it's like what you're saying, like sentence starters, giving like some kind of a framework. And then the G is gratitude. Thanks so much. And then sign your name. So little things like that seem to be helpful for students for sure.
I would say another thing that would be really helpful for a student, especially say a student just moved out of home and is at college now. And like, for me, I used to always go ask my parents, but if I was in by myself, it'd be harder to ask parents. I would say utilize the technology we have now and use like an AI language model and say, hey, I'm asking this question. This is my email. Is this good? Because just having that, yep, this is a great email, or hey, you might want to change that, can give so much confidence in saying, oh, okay, I can send this email. Okay, yep, that looks good. And I'd say utilize the resources that are given to us.
I have a great resource for that. I'm a nerd for this tool. It's called Goblin Tools. It is developed by neurodivergent individuals for neurodivergent individuals. And there's like 8 different things that it can do. But Everett, it has that where you can type in what you want to say and it'll help you format it. So
I love that one too. I have a lot of clients who use that to break down a project into little bits. Goblin Tools.
I use it pretty much every day.
Yeah, it was actually like Gen AI popped into my head too. So seems like it's a really great thing for people to use. I was just reflecting on the audience that we have here, a lot of parents that are here. And we know that like the traditional K-12 school system, leading from, kindergarten, sometimes preschool, all the way to college doesn't necessarily fit everyone. So it might be helpful to kind of talk a little bit about some different pathways that might help neurodivergent students get to where they want to go.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie, I drafted out some of my answers to this, but I think this may sound a little too harsh. But I think we really need to move away from the idea that there's one right path. It's something that I preach to my students all the time. For a lot of neurodivergent students, success might look like a gap year, a transition program, a community college, a more hands-on or career-focused path. Timing in all of that is a huge piece. Not yet doesn't mean never. The ultimate goal is finding a path that's sustainable long-term. And that may look like a million different things for a million different people.
I would add on to that and say, I experienced that not yet doesn't mean not ever. Through my transition period from kindergarten to finding LSS, I had somehow ended up on where my summer break was during the winter and my winter break was during the summer, which doesn't always add up, right? Especially like, for example, I wanted to take AP classes and take the exams, but I couldn't take the exams because I was reversed. And so I worked with LSS and used their non-traditional platform to do the 9th grade in 5 months. And I essentially restarted where I was beginning my next school year from, just by going 8th grade, immediate 9th grade start, immediate 10th grade start. And that's a great example of that is, hey, in 9th grade, I was told, hey, yeah, you can't take these exams yet. However, if you want to be crazy enough, you can try this and then you can take those AP exams. And so I was like, sure, go ahead. Let's see if I can do this. And I was never told no. I was never told, no, you can't try that because you're neurodivergent. I was told, might as well, like, let's see what happens. So I agree with that.
I love how you were talking about, Tony. Well, you mentioned gap year. I have many students who've taken a gap year between their high school graduation and going to college. One in particular that I'm thinking about, he did some amazing sort of travel opportunities while he was on his gap year, and he was excited about college, but he was sort of he would say he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. And so to have people in your life who support non-traditional, I guess, a non-traditional pathway. I mean, Everett, you were talking about that. You had people who supported you, who were supporting that non-traditional taking of classes. But I love the not yet doesn't mean never, never. So the gap year for some students is a great opportunity for growth. This particular student that I was thinking of was on the young side for his grade. And so he felt like not only did it help him be ready, academically the following year when he enrolled in college, but also just developmentally. And he had some time to grow up a little bit. And it was, I felt really grateful that his parents were on board for something like that.
Yeah, I can, in my own experience now working in the traditional system, I can think about how, like, let's take gifted students, for example. There's a whole lot of research behind like acceleration, curriculum compacting, things like that. And so often there are barriers that are there, like, no, you have to take this particular pathway and you have to go at this particular speed. And it doesn't always work for students and can ultimately have unanticipated consequences and be more negative. And so to have that kind of support system to really help support individuals who do have that kind of neurodivergence to be able to really just follow a path that is going to meet their needs, I think has a really huge benefit. And clearly, like in Everett's case, like it's been very successful for that. I keep seeing Matt, one of our panelists, pop on and pop off. I don't know if he's back. Looks like we might still be having some technical.
He is back. He is having some technical difficulties. We are trying to figure out how to get him off of mute. So stay tuned. Hopefully he will be on stage shortly. Thank you for checking in. I will go ahead and work on that.
Awesome. Well, then I'll move on to the next question. So when we're thinking about maybe alternative pathways or taking roads that are not often traveled, what kinds of skills, mindsets tend to matter the most for neurodivergent students, maybe for their families, again, thinking about our audience as students move to college and careers. And then how might they differ from maybe traditional, what traditional schools might emphasize?
Yeah, so is it okay if I go? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So a lot of traditional schools emphasize academic skills, as they should, like reading, writing, math, social studies. And of course, they're important. But there are other skills that can really determine success in the long run, like executive function, emotional regulation, self-advocacy, daily living skills. You can get into college with strong academics, but you stay there when your underlying skills are strong. In addition, I think we need to be teaching students how to manage their time, how to handle stress, how to ask for help, and how to build their own support systems.
Of course, I want to add on about executive function because that's what I talk about all the time in my life. My 2 teenage children are probably tired of hearing their mom talk about brains and executive function. But anyway, here we are. Yeah, Tony, I mean, absolutely. The executive function stuff, I think, is key. Students come to me, and they probably do to you too, who are often very smart, very bright. The IQ has nothing to do with it, why I see students. It is the managing on a daily basis, right? So you talked about time management, you talked about systems, like setting up systems. I mean, just a quick sort of definition of what is this executive function business anyway, in case there's people in the audience who don't even know what this means. Executive function are the skills that help us get our stuff done. That's the simple definition that I like to use. So yeah, we're talking about time management. We're talking about organization, planning, getting started. I find that of all the clients who come to me, I would say almost everyone says that getting started is tricky. especially when it's something boring or they're tired or they're distracted, right? So that's a skill. Getting started, being able to start something that you're not that excited about is a skill. Um, Finishing it to completion is a skill too. So all of those skills, in addition to the self-advocacy that we talked about and sticking up for your brain and maybe reaching out to the systems or the support systems on campus. But these, you're right about, like, your grades or your academics get you in, but then the things that keep you there and successful are these other things. And also executive function is important for life stuff too, right? Like, it's not just school. It's like paying your bills on time and keeping gas in your car and refilling your medication prescription. And so all of that stuff has to happen too. Um, the other thing, I'm sorry, I'm going off a little bit. The other thing I think about when it comes to, being on a college campus is what to do with a syllabus. I mean, that is such a simple, like, thing. Every professor is going to give you a syllabus, but what do I do with that now that I don't have anybody, helping me keep track of deadlines and assignments? So sometimes with college students, we work on, like, what to do with the dates on those syllabus and what do I do with that information? So all of that stuff is the extra are the extra skill things that have to happen for a student who's choosing college, and for students who's not. They just won't have a syllabus for it.
I'll add on to that and say, I think one of the most important skills, including all of the ones that were mentioned, is time management. And I don't know if that falls under a blanket somewhere, but I have noticed just from my personal experience versus other students that I have met, I did not realize how much time management I had learned and how many skills I had created at LSS. Because at LSS, I'm given okay, here is your 120 assignments. Here's our suggested deadlines. Finish them by the end of the semester. Good luck. And I didn't realize how useful that was and how great of a teaching strategy that was, because now in college, time management, fine. I was like, oh, okay, yep, that makes complete sense. My University 101 class, my professor was like, you created a really good chart. I was like, yeah, I've done this before. Like, I understand how to do this. And something I've noticed in just sometimes traditional schools is that you're given your teacher constantly reminding you, okay, this assignment's due tomorrow. Okay, hey guys, we need to finish this assignment today in class. And when I see students that had that, they're always like, I forgot about this assignment. I was like, well, they told you about it at the beginning of the semester, and they told you about it in that syllabus. And so using that syllabus to, like, my poor Google Calendar at the beginning of each semester is just on my Chrome tab for multiple hours as I'm like, this assignment's in there, this assignment's in there, this assignment's in there, this assignment's in there. And it's just time management is something you have to learn. And I would also say accountability. That's a hard one. And it's always like, okay, this assignment's late. I can just do it tomorrow. I can just do it tomorrow. I don't need to do it today. And then you can't do it anymore because the deadline closed. And so having an accountability partner that shares, like, I have a friend that has access to my Google Calendar, and so they can see when my assignments are about to be due. I also have access to theirs. And so together we're like, hey, you have a chemistry lab due today. What are you doing about that? Are you almost finished with that? Have you not even started it? If you haven't even started it, okay, how can I help? Like, I already took this class. What skills are being tested in it? Where can I best support you? And so I'd say accountability and time management are non-academic things you need to learn, just essential. And it's not even in school, it's in daily life when you're at work. I hope your boss isn't reminding you every 30 minutes, hey, this needs to be done, because then it'd be so much worse. And so, like, just being able to be independent is a skill that must be had.
I love that comment about accountability. It's like an accountability partner almost, right? Like, you find the right person who, the friend you chose probably to share your Google Calendar with is probably the right friend to share it with. To have that gentle accountability, maybe, right? Like, because you chose this person, they're going to be your friend no matter what. But that you're right. That's a advanced skill or a great way to a strategy to support the brain that you have. I love that.
Yeah, I love the idea of an accountability partner. I'm going to use that. I'm going to tell my office manager that she's my accountability manager, a partner. I just thinking and listening about like once all the things that go into success in college, and then you also Everett mentioned independence, and I think that one of the things we talked about in the pre-meeting was the idea of identity. And I can imagine that when you go out on your own and the independence, like you really start to kind of lean into like who you are as a person. And so we also discussed the idea of intersectionality, namely that like neurodivergence is just one aspect of an individual's identity. Knowing that kids and people are multifaceted, how should educators and families think about supporting the whole student?
I can speak on this from a college counseling standpoint in particular. So in college counseling, it's sometimes easy to default to the same list of good support schools. But that really ignores other pieces of a student's identity, things like race and gender and orientation and religion and interests and all of the things that make us really unique. So really supporting the whole student means asking, where will this specific student feel seen, supported, and have the opportunity to grow? I think it's really important to get granular when we're talking about each student, because if you've met one student, you've met one student, right? So yeah, I think it's really important to look at every piece of a student's identity, even though it's really easy to just focus on one because it makes our jobs easier.
And oops, sorry,
Go ahead, Everett.
Okay, thank you. I would say from a student perspective, the best way to feel seen is not only being treated as a neurodivergent student. Like, I'll have days where I need to sit down and do some weird complex math that is on me because of my degree. And then there's other days that I'm like, I just want to build a Lego. Like, can I just be simple and just do something that doesn't require brain power? And I think often when neurodivergent kids are being raised, it's often like you hit polars. You hit, okay, you need to go, academics, 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 academics. Or it's like, no, you need to be normal, you need to be normal. And so my parents did a great job with this, but finding that middle ground of, yes, I'm going to go do this and I'm going to go pick a school because it has great academics. I also picked the school because it was 5 minutes from the beach and I like going to the ocean. Like, so finding that middle ground, like you said, Miss Tony, is like picking schools based off of just their disability services programs. There are things that can be worked around, and being able to pick any school, like no student should be told, hey, you really shouldn't go to that school. You're not independent enough to do it, or you're too neurodivergent to do that. Like just adding in those, you're not good enough, you're not able to do this, is such a horrible way to approach that. And so I think being able to say, yep, we're going to be able to send you wherever you want to go. Let's work on this together, academics wise, living wise, how independent are you wise in going to that school. And so I think that's a great idea about picking the middle ground.
I love this whole person kind of approach. What was on my mind as we were talking about it is kids who don't have that kind of support. Here we're privileged to be able to have this conversation and be able to have somebody say to a child, go where it's best for you, and not just where the disability services office is best or whatever, like all these other things that are true about you. I guess I feel for the kids who don't have this kind of support across the board, and also who aren't as understood. Right. Like here we are in a room talking with each other. We're all sort of in this same circle of agreement about brains and about life and school. And anyway, I just wanted to call out that, yeah, all that stuff's so good. And there's lots of kids who don't receive that kind of support. So that's something I think about a lot in my work.
I might add a funny little thing to that I just remembered. Finding that support system, yes, can be really difficult. I will say something that not always happens for everybody that happened to me is, so I'm only 15, so my mom moved with me to college. And that being said, my poor mom is now the college mom to 18 other college students that don't leave our house on the weekends. And it's just, it was an unexpected form of support, I think, for a lot of them. A lot of them have been like, hey, Miss Ginny, there's a random question I have that I need an adult to ask. And so she's like, yeah, sure, I'm here. And I'm always curious, like, are there college moms like at other universities? Are there other just moms that happen to live in the area, or families that happen to live in the area are like, hey, whoever wants free food, come and get it, because you can always get a student with free food. And so it's an interesting support. I thought it was funny whenever you said finding that system. I was like, oh,
I love that. Makes me think of RAs, like in dorms. Like if someone's going to a college with a dorm, there's usually RAs or somebody who's above an RA. The dorm, I don't know. I don't forget what they're called. But anyway, the RAs are usually students, older students. I don't know about college moms, but I think RAs and other older students who are mentors to students when they first come to school, or when they've been there a while too, maybe is the equivalent of a college mom.
I love it. Okay, I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to ask the final question to the panel, and just wanting to make sure our audience, and we've given tons of advice, but maybe give some more practical takeaways. So the final question is, we know there's a lot of complexity to everybody's circumstances. Carrie, you talked about that a little bit, and we all talked about that a little bit. And some people, they have different resources than others. What are some takeaways or one or two pieces of advice that you might want to give that are accessible to anyone listening, either a neurodivergent individual or their families, or both?
There are two pieces of advice that I give literally every single student that I work with as they're getting ready for life after high school. And it's build one or two planning and time management systems, like a calendar or a task list, or if you like sticky notes, or there's a million different things like Notion and Trello if you want to get like super complicated with it, and just practice using them consistently. Especially before you go into college, because learning how to college and learning how to live by yourself for the first time and learning how to read that syllabus and manage your social life and your academics and all of that just gets more stressful when you're trying to figure out an organization system that works for you. And then we've talked a lot about this tonight, but start practicing self-advocacy early. Small and consistent steps can make a huge difference over time. So
I'll chime in there too on the self-advocacy piece. Sometimes with my students that I work with, we create a script almost of like you talked about sentence starters too, Tony, like here's how you could say, hey, I'm having trouble, or I'm confused about, like we sometimes will write out a script and then I ask students to practice it. So that's like one example in the mirror maybe, or with a friend, like Everett, with your accountability partner or somebody who you trust, know and love and trust, to have that practice of asking questions. And then I would say, as an executive function coach, we talk a lot about systems and time management and calendars and things like that. So, but I guess to add on to what you were saying, Tony, about trying to start using something like that before you leave for school or beyond, is to just go slow. Pick one thing to work on, one routine, one calendar system, one sticky note or app or whatever system to capture what you need to do that day. But go slow and keep it small. Because you're right. Once you get, there's so much that's new when you leave home that it's nice to have a few of those things already in place, or at least be thinking about and trying to work on consistency. I love that.
And I'll be real quick, but I will add, I'd say when you're in high school, pinpoint what you struggle with the most, and then spend the entirety of high school working on that. Because then by the time you get to college, it won't be a struggle anymore. Like for me, it was talking to people. So I spent middle school and high school learning how to communicate with fellow humans, and because animals were just fine, but with fellow humans, and being able to then come to college, because if you can't speak for yourself in college, you're not going to make it anywhere. And that goes along with self-advocacy.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. That was a great conversation, and those 50 minutes went by really fast.
Thank you all so much for sharing more about your experiences. We actually had some great questions come through in the Q&A. So now we're going to go ahead and move forward. And Jeffrey, you will now become a panelist, and I will ask you all these questions that came through. So we had Janice ask, the biggest issue I see when students I work with through the college planning and admissions process in high school don't register to the Student Disability Services offices in college. Do you have any advice or suggestions that I can use to motivate these young adults to register? And this can be an open question for anybody to answer.
I would add one real quick. From being a student, I'd say the biggest motivator was showing me what I could have. Like finding an example of a student or an older student a few years ahead that had already claimed using disability services and had moved forward with those opportunities, just being like, hey, this could be you. That was such a big motivator. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll sign up. Like, give it to me right now. Like, I'll go ahead and do this, just because I saw what I could have and what it could lead to.
I was just having this conversation with a bunch of college counselors just yesterday, and I'm not sure I have great advice other than I like Everett's point of like literally showing what types of resources are within the Office of Disability Services. But this group of college counselors and I were talking about how a lot of students don't like disability, the word, right? I love, Everett, how you said it's called accessibility services where you are. And that I think a lot of colleges could take note of that. And so I think it's a turnoff for a lot of students. So the question asker, the person, I hear it all the time too. They don't want to be seen, but maybe giving them some specific examples of what resources are available.
I know this is going to be a real bummer. So I apologize in advance, but I've been in this for almost 13 years, and I've worked with students who have not requested those their first semester, and they have to learn how to fail forward, which I think is a huge skill as a human to learn. But sometimes it takes not doing so well to motivate you to get the help that you need, which is scary. I know there's a lot of parents in here, and I always tell parents, like, I don't envy you. It's scary to be a parent, and it's scary to know that your students are going to make mistakes and they're going to have to learn from them. But students should really know that even if you don't request it and it doesn't work out, it's not too late. It's never too late. So just keep that in mind.
Great point. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, kind of along that same line of thinking, Nancy asked, do most colleges offer support services for neurodiverse students? And how can we look for the schools that do those services the best?
Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Tony, you're the best one to answer this.
I'm a nerd for college. So I answered this in the chat. All colleges are going to offer disability services or accessibility services, depending on what they call it. And that's where students can get those accommodations that they need. But there are only about 150 colleges in the US that offer a structured support program specifically for neurodivergent students. And then there's a question later on, Jessica, so I'm going to address that one. Is there a website to review those? No, unfortunately. My job would be a lot easier if there was. But I can give you some advice. When you're looking for those support services, ask tough questions. Don't just go by what they're advertising on their website, because a lot of times they're advertising things that they don't have the resources to offer. So one, actually physically talk to them before making a decision on the school. But ask really, like, how much time can your staff dedicate to each individual student? How many times a week are we meeting? How many, what other resources do you offer? Is there peer mentoring? Is there tutoring that's offered by professionals and not just peers? There's a lot of really tough questions that you can ask to get at the heart of what they're really doing in their offices.
I will say during my college touring era of at my senior year, me and my parents would go in and we would ask, hey, what does this program look like? What am I specifically going to receive? And there was some universities that when we were told what we were actually going to receive, we were like, yeah, no, this probably is not going to work, because I knew what I needed to push for. And so it was great going to the school and physically, and I even went into the offices. Like, I didn't even talk to the tour guides. We went directly to, even if it was all the way across campus, would go talk to the accessibility service people and be like, hey, what are you going to receive? Because then it also let me see what the office looks like. I could read the room and see, okay, this is what I'm probably going to receive. This is what other students are doing.
So someone just mentioned, and I was going to put this in the chat. I just hadn't gotten to it yet. So Eric Enlick, a great independent educational consultant, he is a neurodivergent specialist and maintains a free spreadsheet of programs. I would look at that carefully. This is what I tell my families to look at, is that if the service is free, it's probably not offering everything that a lot of students need, because colleges don't just have, all the resources to spread around to everybody all the time. We wish that they could. So if you are looking at that database and you're looking specifically for a structured support program for neurodivergent students, look at the ones that are fee-based.
Great. Thanks for sharing that insight. We have a question that I think Everett could probably answer based on his recent experiences. And I think the rest of the panel could share kind of based on what they've seen students find helpful. But Chris asked, can you talk about how college size and student population and other factors like urban versus rural work best for neurodivergent students?
Yes. I did not realize how much it affected my college decision until few weeks back. I was like, oh, wait a second, what did I do? In a good way. I toured some of the largest campuses in the United States, CU Boulder, University of Florida. Like, I went to the big schools, and then I came here to Embry-Riddle, which, do not quote me on the exact population size, but I want to say somewhere around 10,000 to 6,000 students, like much smaller campus size compared to 60,000. Instrumental in neurodivergent learning. In this small campus, I feel such a better community. Personally, I don't like meeting new people, and I don't meet new people anymore. I run into the same people every single day, which is really good because it lets me feel a sense of home and a sense of belonging. And I would say just in the larger campuses, like, I can read a map, but even I was like, I'm going to get lost on my way to my math class because it is a 30-minute walk, maybe 15-minute bus ride. Like, that's just not feasible. I wanted something that I could walk from one side of campus to the other side of campus in 15 minutes. And that's exactly what I found. So I would say, depending on the student, but a smaller campus size really works well for me specifically as a neurodivergent student.
Yeah, you said it, Everett. It really, really depends on the student. There are colleges that are very large that offer support programs. There's the SALT Center at University of Arizona. There's West Virginia University, just off the top of my head. Those are huge schools with structured support programs that will be the right fit for some students, while smaller institutions may be the right fit for others. The right fit for students ultimately just means that they can use their strengths, access support when they need it, and explore who they are. It's where they're going to thrive, not just survive. So.
Amazing. Great. Well, I think we have time for one more question. So we're going to end with Vicky's question, who asked, how can a parent best support their resistant teen in getting them to recognize that executive function skills are necessary and helpful, and that this is an area they need to reach out for help to develop?
What a good question. I don't have the answer to your question, unfortunately. I just want to say that you're not alone as a parent or an educator or as an adult in the life of a child to have the child not be interested in getting help or not even notice that this is a challenge. I will say a student is only ready when they're ready. When, for instance, when parents and students come to me, one of my first questions to them before we even start working together is, how does your student feel about getting some help in this area? And I always say, like, just because now is not the right time, the student is either doesn't recognize that there's a problem or doesn't want the help, doesn't mean that they won't ever be ready. So it's not the answer that this person probably wants, but I don't think there's any way to get a student interested until they're ready themselves. I don't know. Do you agree, Tony, Jeff?
I think that, oh, sorry, Jeff, you chime in.
Yeah, I was just listening to that, and I think that you're exactly right. I was going to say maybe ice cream helps, but I was actually reflecting on something that Everett had mentioned earlier in the conversation, which was kind of identifying a goal and working on that goal. And I think that really comes to what is, like you were saying, Carrie, what is the student ready for, and having that conversation with them. I would be very hesitant to place an enormous amount of pressure, especially if they aren't ready. However, maybe there is that small thing that the student can work toward. And just as we've talked about, I think a theme through this whole conversation that's come up is like that little by little. And like from wherever they began to where they end up, they'll look back and think, oh, wow, I really got to where I needed to go. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
I've had luck equating executive function with not school. I think we sometimes make the mistake of talking about like executive function is important for school. And sometimes that's boring. So I've had luck equating it to like adult skills. Mm-hmm. Like you need executive function skills to pay your bills on time. You need executive function skills to get to work, to manage work projects, to not get fired. And that has sometimes motivated students to be a little more interested. I can't say that they're like jazzed about it, but
Yeah, it's life. It's school and life. Right. So one other way, I will say that when I talk to students too, one of the ways I sometimes get a little like, is to say that my job is to help make school and life easier for you because it's not supposed to be this hard, right? Like it's not for the students who struggle with this stuff. It's not supposed to be this hard. So like having the goal of making life easier for you sometimes helps buy in.
Perfect. And I was just going to ask if we had time for one more question because I saw multiple people actually asked about finding an executive function coach. Carrie, thank you so much for reaching out in the chat. And if everybody can write down Carrie's email, we can also send that information to everybody after this. But we're going to go ahead and end the event tonight. Thank you all so much for joining. We really enjoyed learning more from you all. And we hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Bye.